Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star joins us. Um, Indiana is down to just needing two spots filled, Dustin, but it's the same two spots that they needed filled for a while. At the beginning of this and now still at the end. And I'm being a little surprised that it's taken as long as it has, because Indiana has so much to offer. And I'm not talking NIL, I'm talking all of it combined and winning. I think that they're have a team that is ready to win especially with those two pieces in place. So it really is surprising me why someone's not kind of jumping at the chance. Let me be that shooting guard. Let me be that wing, because that is a position of need. So playing time is being laid out on a platter for you.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm pretty surprised about it too. It's just because of the number of guys they've gone after. And seemingly just missed. I mean, they have been, two or three, for several guys, had opportunities. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything new on I can't even say his name, the Mgbako front.
Mgbako.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I think he was in this week, and he certainly seems like a guy that would fit would fit that mold. But they're going up against Kansas. I know this because I don't know. I got tagged in one of those Andrew Slater tweets, and then like your whole Twitter mentions are blowing up for the next 3 days. IU fans and Kansas fans have been going after it over this in my mentions and everybody's mentions who's tagged in this tweet for the last 3 days. So they're going after it, and it's not easy to beat Kansas obviously right now.
Well, especially if they are in need for him and he completes something for them.
Yeah.
Well, where are you going to go?
Yeah,
team that played for and won a national championship 2 years ago and just added Hunter Dickinson. Yeah,
right. And was a 1 seed last year, and I got beat before they were supposed to, but all the same is just stacking 25, 26, 27 win seasons versus Indiana, who's still trying to just to bring it up. So I mean, they've still got a chance. I mean, obviously the fact that he came to Bloomington matters. If you can get the guy on campus in Bloomington, you have a shot. You have an opportunity because you're going to bring them in, and everybody's going to know them. And even it was graduation weekend, I'm sure he ran into a whole bunch of people that were like, "Hey, you should come to Indiana. I'm leaving, but you should stay." That sort of thing. I'm sure that gives you a chance because it is, as somebody saw. Had a comment down here about its importance as a transfer destination. And it's not that it isn't. I mean, they've certainly got some good players through the portal, so far. It's just, it's constant. It is constant at this time of year trying to get with these guys. And there are a lot of good transfer destinations. There's a lot of places you can go because there's just so much shakeup. I mean, like it's musical chairs, you know what I mean? And it's a lot of musical chairs that are open. It's not a small amount where, okay, well, this is good opportunity and you don't have any other ones. This is obviously the best one. Like there's a bunch out there, and there's a bunch of teams that have needs because, they've got people leaving. So it's just, there's just so many shifting bodies that it's not easy to keep tabs on it. I think I do remain not unconvinced, but I mean, I think that the broader analysis of the Mike Woodson regime as recruiting in the portal and with freshmen is it's not obviously certainly that he can't recruit. It's not certainly that I think what's been made very, very clear is he can close and he can absolutely relate to these kids and whatnot. But I mean, I think the fact that you haven't seen a steady stream of commits, that you've had these sort of, they kind of come in bunches and then they don't get anybody for a while. Whether it's at the high school level or at the transfer level, they seem to have sort of short waves of success and then, periods where they have a hard time, just getting anybody to make a commitment. I don't know why that is. And certainly because I'm not covering the team anymore. I don't know what it's a product of. I mean, I'm not seeing these, I'm not going to the travel events anymore. So I don't know who they're talking to, how wide of a net they're casting, how they're focusing, in terms of broader recruiting strategy, what that's looking like. But from a distance, it does make you wonder why, they go through periods where it seems like they have a hard time landing anybody at any level.
Was it Gabe Cupps originally an Archie Miller recruit?
Yes. So Gabe Cupps, and now he didn't commit to Archie Miller, and that's worth mentioning. So
but he was in on him early, and he was on him pretty hard from the start. I remember. I think
he was. So like that does come back to, you got to give credit to Mike Woodson for sticking with guys that were part of that staff, because really he's Brian Walsh is the driving force behind that. Well, Brian Walsh still works for Mike Woodson. So, if you're like, you can't say like, okay, well, like that's an Archie recruit. Well, like you got to give credit for Mike for the fact that there were guys on that staff. He said, I still need these guys, rather than, and I think that was one of the best qualities that Mike showed in the early part of his tenure was not being so arrogant as to say that guys on this staff can't help me because they'll, like for fear maybe that they would try to sabotage him or something like that. But like he had guys, he looked around and said, there are talented guys on the staff that can help me. I haven't coached college, and there are things about it that I need somebody at this level to understand, and I don't necessarily have a Rolodex of guys that are at this level, that coach at this level versus the NBA. So he kept Brian Walsh, and Brian Walsh, one of the first things he did was go in and tell Mike Woodson, hey, you got to see this guy, and you have to see him, you have to watch him play a game because the highlights aren't going to do it justice. You have to watch Gabe Cupps dictate a basketball game, which is what I saw when I went to go see him last year. So yeah, now a lot of these guys, that they've had recruited were guys that the assistants had a connection to, whether that was Kenya Hunter, who and who was already in the building, and Yasir Rosemond, who just was really, really connected in Atlanta, and then also Walsh being part of the program as video coordinator at the time. I mean, he kept early recruiting coordinator at the time. So, Woodson keeping those guys and acting on those connections, doesn't take away from them as recruiting wins for his regime, I don't think. But yeah, the point being, it's just, the initial wave of recruits was a lot of guys that, those guys were already connected to in some way, shape, or form. It's been hard to land anybody since.
And now you've added Jordan Halls to this staff, which he doesn't have any recruiting experience, and everything in that regard he's learning now per se. But
he's not
a lot of times, and yes, there are I don't want to call it games or whatever, but there's a lot of things, routines you have to learn, and that's probably the biggest thing for him is just learning all these different channels you have to navigate, because everything else is just relationship, and relationships
are there already, and that makes a difference. That basically Walsh could just hand that job over and sort of coach holes up into it, because it's not the same as coaching basketball. Yeah, like to your point, there are a whole bunch of things that you have to learn how to do as far as just coordinating things that don't have anything to do with coaching the game, which obviously Jordan Hulse knows a ton about. And I don't think this has anything to do with Jordan Hulse, honestly.
No. I didn't mean, I'm just thinking bringing him up because now he's
sure. Yeah. I mean, he's initially part of the staff and he's learning the job and whatnot.
And he's someone that played while it was overseas. He got 10 solid years in and left at the top of his game. He was 1 year removed from an MVP award over there and playing on the two best teams he'd ever played on, and walked away. He wasn't done. He left for this job.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he still had years in the tank. If that's all he ever wanted to do. Now at a certain point, you got to just, this was what he saw as kind of his long-term future and the opportunity to be in Bloomington, certainly where his family still is, was something that he jumped on and everything like that. But like, to your point, I mean, he knows what it looks like, and he knows what the selling point is for Indiana. Obviously, the one issue is that, he's from Bloomington. He played at IU, like he didn't necessarily, have a sense of, I mean, he had a sense, but he might not
the fact that he doesn't kind of know anywhere else is different. But I mean, he obviously played, in a different country and whatnot. That obviously expands his horizons. But I don't ultimately think that's, creating too much of an issue with, the recruiting itself. I think it's there's just a big picture question of why they're going a long time without landing players, and why they're going through a struggle period. Now, they could still land somebody. They could still get a big player. They could still get Mgbako as a high school recruit. They could still get some other transfer guys. There's still time left for them to put a good roster together, but it has been, I imagine just frustrating on the part of IU fans to see, you start to get a couple important guys at the beginning with Sparks and Ware, but have a hard time, getting somebody after that. I got Walker too. So it's just, but they could use a couple more pieces and they're having a hard time getting them.
Well, and that's the thing, though. These two spots, boy, they get just the person that they need for those. They're ready to roll. They are, if in my opinion.
I mean, we got to remember, like we're presuming a lot as far as production is concerned.
Right.
Obviously,
and you have to replace.
Yeah.
You're replacing two All-Americans, and I understand that. But I keep saying this. I think that they will be a better team next year than they were this past year because it wasn't much of a team. It was more of a two-man with some ancillary pieces. As far as production, I think that they're going to be a much more or less predictable team next year. You don't know where the scoring. Obviously, Xavier is going to be the head of the snake, but with everybody else, they seem to have much more depth than we thought they had depth last year. We were all proven wrong. It seems like they've got depth this year because all those guys are experienced. Every one of those guys that are being playing down lower experience. Of course, Malik Renew here. You got Sparks, who's got his own experience. Khalil Ware's got experience. And of course, Walker has got a ton of experience. So you've got a very experienced front court now. And then if you can add a decent piece on that wing and a decent shooting guard, and they've got what they need. They've upgraded in the areas that they needed to upgrade in, if that comes to be.
Yeah, I mean, the big question being who those players turn out to be. It's they could, in theory, be a lot better. I'm just not going to rush to the idea, and part of it is because, like to your point, we thought they had depth, and again, just having watched it more from a distance and not really from up close, I still don't understand how some of those guys weren't better. I think the coaches wonder that.
I really do, and but some of it is weird. Like I remember, and I think it might have been either a Big Ten tournament game or early NCAA tournament game where the team is gathered in Jordan Geronimo sitting on the bench still, kind of with his arm just kind of looking off into space. And it's like, wow, that was telling and weird.
Odd.
So
the fact that guy didn't have a really productive year just stuns me. Absolutely stuns me, especially when Race was out for a while, because you saw him sort of bursting at the seams for a couple of years. Just the amount of talent that he had, and I mean he had games where it was just like, okay, there it is. There it is. That's that guy. You give him 30 minutes and he's going to be an all Big Ten player. Like that's what I thought going into that. I mean, like, certainly, Bates had his struggle his freshman year, and you weren't totally sure where I thought he was going to be pretty good. I close to knew Geronimo was going to be good, and it didn't happen, and I was wrong because you'd seen it. I mean, like he'd had spectacular games. He had a spectacular game in the tournament last year in the play-in round, first four, whatever you want to call it, in Dayton. I mean, he was unbelievable that game. So when you saw that much athletic talent, just raw physical athletic talent, I mean, I'm still shocked that didn't translate. So my point being, to go back to the initial reason I brought it up is, we don't know what translates on paper.
that you're talking about a lot of production lost between Jackson Davis and Hood Schifino, and Miller Kopp and Race Thompson. I mean, those are some experienced guys, some talented guys. You lose Jordan Geronimo and Tabar Bates. There's talent there, even if they didn't necessarily hit their potential. There's really talented players, so there's a lot of guys that are being shifted out of that, a lot that has to be replaced. I feel like I'm not going to know anything about this team until December, until it has played, until you have a sense of how good Xavier Johnson can still be, how good Khalil Ware is, how much Peyton Sparks can raise his level, in moving up a notch, where Walker fits in. And then who these new guys tend to be, CJ Gunn, Caleb Banks, Ja'Kai Newton, Gabe Cupps, what do they do? How ready are they? There's so many questions that are going to be answered for this. I wouldn't even want to hazard a guess as to what Indiana can be in 23, 24.
No, that prediction business is
we're out.
It's bad.
Yeah.